Guidance is internal. Ignition sequence starts. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Permission to board. Permission to come aboard. Permission to board. Permission to bring me aboard. Permission to come aboard.
Welcome to the Permission Granted podcast. Here's D.A.
Welcome inside episode 6 of the Permission Granted podcast. So glad you decided to stop on by. Thanks for joining us. And got a good one all set up for you a little bit later on in the podcast as always. Rock and Mraz are bickering and breaking things down, and they're going over the NFL weekend and a couple of young quarterbacks that have gotten some run, some burn early in this season. One of the things that I'm excited to talk about in this episode is, in my estimation, the most talented college football team of all time. That 2001 Miami Hurricanes national championship team that ended up going back in 2002 and losing in the that controversial national championship game against Ohio State in 2002. That 2001 team was just stupid. I mean, absolutely sick in terms of NFL talent. You could argue there could be 4 Hall of Fame NFL players on one college football team. So we're going to discuss that a little bit later on in the podcast, and we'll discuss that with a guy and why we're talking about it on this podcast. We're going to discuss that with a guy that played on that team. Linebacker for the Chicago Bears, and the Bears are a 2-1 squad right now, coming off the Monday night win over the New York Jets, and that come-from-behind win out in San Francisco. Linebacker DJ Williams played at the U and joins us here on the DA Show. DJ, how are you, man?
Hey, what's up? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks so much for joining us, and I'm so glad that we had a chance to catch up with you, because one of my favorite things in sports is to go back onto those Miami Hurricanes teams that you played on back in the early 2000s and look at what the number of NFL talents you guys had and Pro Bowlers. I mean, not just, can make a team, draft in the 6th or 7th round, first rounders, second rounders, Pro Bowls, future Hall of Famers. When you look back on those Hurricanes teams, is it a little mind-blowing that there was all of that talent on a college football team?
Yeah, definitely. Now when I look back, being a little older and understanding, how hard it is to make it to the NFL, to get picked first round, and, to have an outstanding career. There's not too many guys that were part of those draft classes. Like I said, I don't even argue with guys anymore when they talk about their school and who's the best and this and that. I said, look, I played with 26 first-rounders in the discussion, I had 26 first-rounders, played in 4 BCS games, went to 2 national championships, won a national champion. There's my resume. So if you can outdo that, then we can start having a discussion about it, and not too many people can.
I mean, just think about that. As you said, all of those you're talking about 24 first-round draft picks on one roster. Did it feel like an NFL team, even though at the time you couldn't really know that? But now you have some perspective. Did you know how much talent that was there?
Yeah, we definitely did. Just going to a game and trying to get a tackle was a challenge. You had 10 different guys racing to the ball first. Just being in a game trying to get a normal tackle was a challenge for me with all that talent around. Sorry, the baby's crying. Well,
hey, you got to take care of the baby. That's the first and foremost. I know we're doing the interview, but it's all right. Got to take care of the kid. Are you your babysitting today? You got him for how do you make sure you take care of her?
We just went and had lunch, and it's just around her nap time, so I'm not giving her too much attention in the bag. And I think she knows that I'm on the phone interview, so she's being a little bit more vocal than usual. Right.
She knows how to get your attention, right? She's like, oh, Daddy's on the radio. I got to make sure now is when I get my crying in.
Definitely.
Well, you know what? That national championship at the U, that team was incredible. I was wondering, because you guys were so talented and because you guys played with a swagger and a confidence, did you feel like coming into that season was kind of a foregone conclusion? Hey, we are winning the national championship. It just depends on how much we win it by? Because it just seemed like there was so much confidence on that team.
Definitely, because the year before we felt, the BCS with the computers and the rules cheated us. That's the year where I believe it was Oklahoma played Florida State.
Right.
When we played Florida State, they were number 1, we were number 2, like week 6 or 7, and we beat them, and then we won out, and then somehow because we let La Tech score a certain amount of points, the computer at Florida State jumped us again. So we went and won the Sugar Bowl, but, as soon as that game was over, we want the national championship. So going into that season, that was the only thing that was on our mind.
Who was the best college player you played with? Who was the most talented teammate that you played with at the U?
I would say just natural talent, just God-given. Didn't need to. Not saying he didn't look in the playbook, but didn't need to look at a playbook or lift a weight or work out. I'd say Sean Taylor.
Mm.
And then when it comes to a person using their talent and taking it to the next level with studying and being prepared for a game, I would say Ed Reed. He did some amazing things. Well,
and just think about that. Those guys were your teammates at the same time on the same college team. Like Sean Taylor and Ed Reed are playing the same position. It's mind-blowing that you could have that much talent on a college team.
Yeah, definitely. That's why those years, Sean Taylor came in the beginning of his career, and, he was a kickoff and punt team monster because we still had Reed.
Yeah, it's just hard to break on the field when you have that much talent, as you said. It's hard to get tackles, You're trying to do anything you can to contribute. DJ Williams, linebacker, Bears, joining us here on the show. So you end up getting drafted in Denver, and you have that crazy Tim Tebow season where you go to the playoffs, but it's like it's a soap opera every single day. When you look back at that, how difficult was it to keep focus over the course of those weeks?
You know what? It really wasn't that difficult for me. I'm not a newspaper clipping reader or, watching things on TV. Tim was actually a great teammate. He showed up to work, on time and ready to work and worked hard every day. It was more of the media that made a frenzy about it, with him. And I think he handled it pretty well. And I think our team handled it pretty well. But we did go on a little hot streak and win 6 or 7 games in a row, like in some amazing Tebow fashion. So honestly, it was pretty fun.
It's interesting because, it didn't seem to derail you guys because you went on that run and you were winning games in a row and you went into the playoffs and won the playoff game over the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so things were good on the football field. But, as you mentioned, just from a media standpoint, was it difficult to make sure you didn't allow that to be a distraction?
Yeah, definitely. But, everybody's a professional. We know how to conduct ourselves in interviews or on TV shows. The biggest problem was, a lot of the questions had nothing to do with football or our team.
Right.
Which I think people probably should have focused on more than anything.
It's been a tough couple of weeks for the NFL, and obviously there's been a lot of off-the-field stuff that people have been talking about. Has it been difficult as a player to see guys that or guys that maybe your teammates are friends with be put under the microscope like this, whether you agree or disagree with whatever's going on? I got to imagine it's difficult from a player standpoint to just kind of feel like the league is in this much turmoil and this much controversy all the time.
It's very tough. Sometimes people forget that, athletes, superstars, and things like that are regular people. People make mistakes and make decisions that they probably shouldn't do. But the worst part about my job is, the whole world knows about it. It might be something as simple as me getting me not having my driver's license registered in a certain state, then I go to jail. Well, the headline of the paper is just going to say Chicago linebacker DJ Williams jail. Where if that same situation happened to another person, nobody outside their inner circle would ever hear about it or be mentioned about.
So that's kind of the balance that you have to always remember. As you said, man, you get free steaks, and it's celebrity, and it's money, and it's all this great stuff that comes with professional athletics. And so you have to balance that by knowing that with all of that comes the downside, which is, the tabloids and the headlines and the scrutiny that comes with it. I guess it's probably tough to always keep those two things in focus, right?
Yeah, definitely. Whenever you step out of the house, you need to step out of the house. At all times, you have your name on your back, the NFL seal, and your organization. And at no point in time do you ever want to, put a blemish on any of those. So, just like Coach Tressman tells us, he says, you find yourself in a certain situation, take a step back, take 3 deep breaths, and then, decide what's the right decision is to make.
With the Adrian Peterson thing, it's so interesting because doing this show, there's been plenty. We're on all across the South, and we're out of New York City, so we're on in the North as well. And people say it might be regional or it might be cultural, that some people would discipline their child with a switch, others would not. And then there are players that say, hey, I was disciplined like this, and I would do this to my son as well. I don't know if you guys talk about this stuff in the locker room, but do you feel like it's a generational thing? Is it a cultural thing? Is it maybe regionally how people are raised and they grow up?
I really think it's each in his own family. I got little spankings when I was younger. And, the spankings, it really wasn't the force of my nana, spanking me on the hand or on the leg or whatever that, caused a problem. It was, I really cried or got upset because, I hurt her feelings and I know I did something wrong. You're kind of embarrassed as a kid and this and that. So it really wasn't the actual force of the hit, and things like that. But, it's tough. It's how do you tell somebody else how to raise their child? And then at the same time, how do you make sure that the way that somebody's raising their child isn't abusive? It's a thin line between, I would say, a disciplinary action, like a little spank and slap on the hand, and a whooping. And I think that's what the NFL is trying to find out about right now. And of course, you have the pictures, which makes things even worse. And I think it's just a tough thing because it's hard to tell another grown man how he should raise his children, or how he should have his household go.
You're right, exactly, about letting your parents down or embarrassing your parents. Sometimes it's not the actual physical pain of it, whatever your parents did. Sometimes it's just that, as you said, you're doing something wrong and you're ashamed, or you're embarrassed, or you just don't want your parents mad at you, right? And that sometimes is way more powerful.
That's really what it is. Like, I was speaking to somebody the other day, and I'm not trying to compare a child and a dog, but when my dog does something wrong, he knows. And, I can go up and I can gently, tap his nose, and he rolls on the ground and act like, I got a belt wrapped around my hand and I'm scolding him. But it's really just because that he knows that I'm upset and, he feels like I let him down and things like that.
Yeah, DJ Williams joining us here, linebacker for the Bears. You got to follow him on Twitter at DJ Williams55. And again, Dime Life is a key word for him, as rebranding and a branding and a clothing line, relaunching the clothing line because it's featured also in a motion picture when the game stands tall. So it's pretty cool. He's got a lot of good stuff going on. And, you got a lot of stuff in the middle of a football season. Never a dull moment for you, right?
Never. And everybody needs to know Dime Life is spelled DYMELYFE, and that's www.dimelife.com.
There you go. That's the information from DJ Williams. Well, DJ, it is so cool to catch up with you, man. It's a busy time of the year for you, so I appreciate you carving out some time. Congrats on the big win in San Francisco. Hopefully that propels you guys moving through the season. And we'll have to catch up again, man. This was great.
Oh, definitely. Thank you, and I appreciate you.
All right, welcome inside the second part of our Permission Granted podcast. After speaking to DJ Williams, linebacker, formerly of the Miami Hurricanes, now the Chicago Bears. And joining me on the line right now is one of my best friends in the world. We go back to college, back at Syracuse. He's now the director of media relations for the Arizona Coyotes, no longer the Phoenix Coyotes of the NHL, the Arizona Coyotes. Had a long and distinguished broadcasting career himself and worked sideline for the Syracuse radio broadcasts on, I believe, the Syracuse IMG radio broadcast, which went down to Miami, and Syracuse got thrashed by the Hurricanes that year in 2001. Chris Wojcik, who loves this 2001 team as well of the Canes. Woj, how are you?
I'm great, and who better to talk college football than a guy who now works in hockey?
That's right. That's exactly right. You took all that college football knowledge and your fascination with Dave Logan, former head coach of the East Carolina Pirates, and took it into the NHL.
That's right.
Yeah, how's the branding going on the new Arizona Coyotes? That doesn't exactly roll off the tongue yet.
It's nice of you to ask, but since we're not located in Phoenix, it actually makes a lot of sense. And, essentially we just wanted to make us more of a statewide team, so we went with the state name, and it's been a real positive response.
All right, very good. I like it. So, who were you working for in 2001 when you guys did the game? Syracuse IMG?
Yeah, I was working for the radio network, and I was on the sideline for that 59-0 Miami thrashing of Syracuse, who, by the way, at that time was, I don't know if they were top 10, but certainly were top 15 team in terms of the ranking.
That was also the time where didn't ESPN go do College Game Day twice in 2 years with a Syracuse game, I think, at Blacksburg and then at Miami, and Syracuse lost by combined like 120-0 in those two games, and ESPN declared we will never do a Syracuse game on game day ever again?
Yeah, it was probably the jinx. Although that particular year when Syracuse lost to Miami 59-0, they actually had won at Virginia Tech, which at that time was a very difficult thing to do.
So that year, SU actually had something cooking, but they go down to the Orange Bowl and just get absolutely stomped out. Now, you had seen all these games up close. You were on the sideline. You saw the speed of the game. How different was watching the Hurricanes up close?
It was unbelievable to watch these guys, and it's not an exaggeration at all to say it's the best college football team I've ever seen. I mean, it was literally men against boys. And at that particular time, for example, Dwight Freeney was a really good college player, and he ended up going on to have ultimately a better NFL career than Bryant McKinnie. But in that game, Bryant McKinnie absolutely dominated Dwight Freeney and just single one-on-one. They didn't even need an extra person to block him, for example. And I just remember Ken Dorsey, the quarterback from Miami that year, I don't think he was sacked the entire season. Now, there may have been one official sack, so to speak, where maybe he was potentially running and tackled behind the line of scrimmage, but he was never touched in this game. Never touched.
So how about Bryant? How about Bryant McKinnie from a size standpoint? Bryant McKinnie only went to one Pro Bowl over the course of his career.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's weird because I went back and checked the stats. I mean, he started in the NFL for over a decade, but only went to one Pro Bowl. Bryant McKinnie in college, I got the preseason depth chart, the September 1, 2001 of the Miami Hurricanes. Yeah. McKinnie was listed at 6'9", 336.
Yeah, and his reach was so big that you just couldn't get around it. It's amazing it didn't translate into the NFL for him. But I remember specifically 4 players, and it was unbelievable players, but specifically 4 players that were just so fun and just so amazing to watch. And those 4 guys were McKinney, Jeremy Shockey, just looked unbelievable, just so much better than everybody out in the field. And then also Frank Gore, who ironically was the 4th running back on the depth chart. And Frank Gore averaged something like 9 yards a carry as a freshman. But he wasn't even, they had 5 basically NFL-type running backs on the team. And then on defense, Sean Taylor was unbelievable. I know they had Ed Reed, but you watch Sean Taylor in college, I mean, he was just all over the field. Those 4 guys to watch, I just never seen talent like that. It was just remarkable.
So DJ Williams said in the interview that other players bark at him about how good their college teams were and their programs. Yeah. And DJ Williams looks at them and says, I play with 24 first-round picks. End of discussion. Oh, sure. 24 first-round picks. So for people that don't know, this was the depth chart, a couple of the guys on the offense of the 0-1 team. Andre Johnson was one of their wide receivers. Tight end was Jeremy Shockey. One of the backups was Kellen Winslow. There was Brett Romberg, who played in the NFL. He was the center. Bryant McKinnie at left tackle. The running backs that you mentioned, Clinton Portis, Willis McGahee, Najee Davenport, Jared Payton, who was Walter Payton's son, and then, as you mentioned, Frank Gore was a freshman. The quarterback was Ken Dorsey.
And he was the worst, and he was probably the worst player on the team. And he was a good college player, and it never obviously translated to the NFL. But if you honestly look at their lineup, I mean, he just basically had to take the snap and manage the game.
So DJ Williams was a linebacker. Jonathan Vilma was a linebacker. On the defensive line, William Joseph and Jerome McDougal were both first-round draft picks. Vince Wilfork was on that team. Your safeties, as you mentioned, were Ed Reed backed up by Sean Taylor. And then one of your corners was Philip Buchanan. There is, I mean, when you talk about that.
Mike Rumpf was a first-round pick, too.
Yes. Yeah, Mike Rumpf was in that defensive backfield. I mean, when you go down the list, That's absolutely insane. You had NFL Pro Bowlers backing up NFL Pro Bowlers.
Yeah, and Antrell Roll was in that secondary as well.
Yeah, Antrell Roll is on the team. So so the list is absolutely stupid. And I asked DJ Williams who was the best college player ever played with. He said,
well, that's a good question.
He said from a talent standpoint, and you have already named the two. He said from a sheer talent standpoint, it was Sean Taylor. He said he never saw
he was unbelievable. He was unbelievable.
He said he never saw anybody with that sheer athleticism and talent.
Yeah.
He said from a football IQ standpoint where he was talented, but he had work ethic and he was just overall dominant, he said Ed Reed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you're covering this team, I mean, obviously you can't know, but when you look back, that's virtually impossible. I don't know if we could ever see that much talent on one college football team ever again.
No, and I remember actually being on the sideline and thinking that at some point in the second half when Frank Gore started to get carries as the fourth running back and he was ripping off 15 to 20-yard runs against Syracuse's first team with Miami's second team in there, I'm going, this is unbelievable. And I remember thinking at the time that Frank Gore was one of, if not the best college running back I had ever seen, and he was fourth on their depth chart. Now, he ended up having the ACL injury, and then he still ended up having a great NFL career, but who knows with all the injuries he's had, what he could have been had he been healthy.
I mean, I think you can pencil in Ed Reed for the Hall of Fame. I think
for sure.
Right? So you could probably put Andre Johnson in there as well. The Texans have kind of openly talked about him going to the Hall of Fame. Who knows what wide receiver numbers will look like comparatively, but he's had a long and really good career. Vince Wilfork's got to be one of the best defensive linemen.
Discussion.
He's in the discussion. And then, as you mentioned, Frank Gore is probably not going to get there, but his career was long enough and his potential at the beginning was good enough. Willis McGahee, Clinton Portis won't get there. But, I mean, you are talking about guys, Jonathan Vilma won't be in the Hall of Fame, but these are longtime NFL Pro Bowlers that were on this team. I don't know if there's ever been a college team with 3 NFL Hall of Famers on it.
No, and I was thinking about the coaching setup there the other day, too, because we joke about this team from time to time. Imagine you're Larry Coker and you inherit. This is the team you inherit. I mean, he could basically sleep during the game and win. I mean, I was thinking about another coach that inherited something that close. The only thing I could think of was George Seifert with the '89 Niners. I had put Coker and Seifert as a comparison of inheriting just teams that basically all they had to do was just stand on the sideline and smile the entire game.
And maybe he did exactly that because it wasn't long after that where they were an average team and he got canned. So, I mean, just to go over some of the final scores also of that season. So they beat Syracuse 59-0. Then and Syracuse was number 14 in the nation at that point.
Yeah, there you go.
The following game, they beat number 12 Washington 65-7. Okay, they beat number 14 Florida State 49-27
on the road.
On the road at FSU. They went on the road at Virginia Tech. Their one close game at Lane Stadium. They only won by 2, 26-24 in the final regular season game. And then in the Rose Bowl, number 4 Nebraska, they thrashed 37-14. So how is it possible that they became average? The next year they lose in the national title game to Ohio State. How's it possible they became average so quickly?
It's a great question. I think you might have to point the finger at Coker on that one. I mean, think about coaching that team. I mean, I guess you get complacent maybe to some extent, but I mean, I think they lost in what? They lost in overtime the next year in the national title game.
Yeah. And
so I mean, you get all the way to the national title game. I guess to some extent anything can happen. It's not exactly like they had a horrible season, but they probably weren't as dominant the second time through.
And so they beat Rutgers in 01, 61-0. They beat West Virginia 45-3, and they beat Temple 38-0. I mean, you're talking about nobody on the field is even close to being able to compare to that.
No, I mean, the starters were out by the second half, pretty much in every one of those games, with the exception of that Virginia Tech game. And as we mentioned earlier, winning at Virginia Tech at that particular time was almost like a night game at LSU. I mean, it was really, really tough to go to Blacksburg and win a game at that time.
Are you fired up for this NHL season right around the corner?
Fired up. It all starts October 9th for us, but yeah, it's that time of year. Training camp's going on now, and a couple more games in the preseason. But it's always good to get that roster down to a manageable number because, right now we have over 50 guys running around playing different games and doing different practice stuff. So, but yeah, we're excited to get it going here in a couple weeks.
It must really feel like hockey season in Phoenix, right? Because the
it's 104 today. It's 104. It feels like it's actually unusually hot for this time of year here. But right now, sitting inside the rink, it's perfect. Get the nice cool temperature. It's 104 outside. You don't even know.
Leaves are turning, and there's a nip in the air in Phoenix.
Leaves are turning. Yeah, no leaves in Arizona. The only thing we might get today is a little bit of a sandstorm, or what they call. You may not realize this, David, but they're actually called haboobs.
What is that? Haboobs?
Yeah, Haboob. They're called haboobs when, basically it looks like a tornado of sand that kind of comes through the city. It's virtually harmless, but when it's rolling in, it looks like a big, dark cloud. And basically, if you just went and washed your car a couple days ago, you're going to have to go and do it again.
I like that as a minor league hockey team name, the Glendale Haboobs.
Glendale Haboob. That actually isn't a bad nickname.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Chris Wojcik joining us here on the Permission Granted podcast. Woj, it is always great to catch up with you, brother. Be well, and I'll talk to you soon.
I love talking about the 01 Hurricanes anytime.
Don't we all?
Welcome into Side B of the Permission Granted podcast, episode 6 here. It's been a great first month of the podcast. We've got some great reviews from everybody listening. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes by searching the Permission Granted podcast. DA will post it on YouTube as well. Check that out at youtube.com/The DA Show. And myself, DA, and Mraz will all tweet it out. You obviously know DA's Twitter handle, at DA on CBS. I am at KBrockJR. And Mraz is at Sean Morash CBS, ShaunMorash CBS, because he has to spell his name differently than everybody else, but we've delved into that before. Mraz, coming off a weekend where your Giants finally won a game.
We're on the board.
How about that? How are you feeling?
I feel really good about it. I'm happy. I'm pumped up. We're on the board, and at least I have a little hope for a season.
I wouldn't say that there's so much hope as, the Texans, I guess, maybe we're a 2-0 team that we probably shouldn't have bought into. I think
that's true. But now what? Anytime the Giants win a game, we're just going to assume the other team absolutely stinks?
Yeah, I don't think the Giants are that good. But let's dive into that in a little bit when we discuss our pick segment, because the Giants were one of your Sodium Licks picks from the weekend that was. But let's get into the talking point that was a major point on Friday night and then all day and all night Saturday night. And obviously most of last week because we discussed it. Jameis Winston was originally suspended for the first half of the game versus Clemson on Saturday night. And then Friday night, the news came down that the administrators at Florida State, not the athletic director or Jimbo Fisher, the head coach of Florida State, but the people who are, higher up in the university made the decision that Jameis was not going to play on Saturday night at all. They suspended him for the full game. I'm on one side of this issue. You're on the other side. What are your thoughts?
I think Jameis Winston has a lot of growing up to do, and I think he absolutely should have been suspended for the entire game.
Let me jump in real quick. A lot of growing up to do. He is 20 years old. At 20 years old, if you had the coverage that he had going on right now, would we be putting you in the same light as Jameis?
At 20 years old, I wasn't looking to make millions of dollars in the NFL. I wasn't a Heisman Trophy winner. I think there's a difference. It is plenty fair.
No. It's not fair because the maturity level at 20 years old is still the maturity level at 20 years old. You can't compare and contrast because he's going to the NFL. He should be acting a different way. I think that's an unfair comparison for us to make, and that's why we're at the crossroads that we're at right now.
Well, let me ask you something. Was Peyton Manning a mature 20-year-old? No,
he was not. Actually, if you remember, he actually got in trouble because he shanked himself in front of a trainer and then placed his buttocks on a trainer's face. But because we're living in such a social media driven world, that went under, that flew under the radar because we didn't have Twitter and we didn't have Facebook the way we did when Peyton was at Tennessee. So I'm glad you brought up that comparison because that's been sticking to my craw for the past couple of days.
Okay, and after that, did Peyton Manning get to a third or maybe fourth warning with problems? I mean, how many? You have the allegations, and you can say what you want to say about the allegation.
Right.
Who knows what happened there? It seems
the Title IX investigation is still ongoing with the university.
Right. It seems very fishy with everything that would happen there. And number two, the crab legs. You're stealing food, that whole thing. And now
You've never stolen food in your life?
I've never stolen
You've
food in
never
my
stolen
life.
anything in your life.
I enjoy food too much to disrespect it by stealing it.
Disrespecting the food.
Disrespect it.
What, does it taste different if it's stolen?
Yeah, absolutely. You
Come
want
on.
to earn that food. You don't want to steal that food. It's way different. And not to mention,
Get outta here.
my father's worked in supermarkets his whole life. I have respect for the grub.
Oh, well, and you're a former sandwich artist yourself, so get out of here.
Don't mock the
Terrible
word sandwich
person.
artist.
Sandwich.
But the bottom line is this.
Artiste.
Winston, to get back on track, Winston, he had these problems against him. He has to know better. Whether it's a funny thing that he's yelling amongst his friends.
You know, and all these old head media guys who are in there, how can he say something? If you haven't watched those videos, go to YouTube and click. I can't even say what to type in, but you know what to type in at this point.
Right.
Type it in, watch the videos. Those things are hilarious. I don't care who you are. That stuff is funny. He's a 20-year-old kid. Yeah, maybe it wasn't the best form to him to do it, but his friends are egging him on. He succumbed to peer pressure. He stood up on a table and he yelled some things out. Is that worth being suspended an entire game? No. Florida State is just on their high horse.
But that's the point.
But if we were at this, if the Ray Rice stuff didn't happen, if the Adrian Peterson stuff didn't happen, Jameis would not have been suspended. He might have gotten a quarter. Let's be honest. He would have gotten a quarter against Clemson, and then he would have been out there the second, third, and fourth quarter, and Florida State would have won going away. But no, instead, we had to endure Sean McGuire and what his, apparently, he's a highly touted recruit. He looked like garbage on Saturday night.
Still
and
got
it was
the job
bad
done.
football. It was a bad product for college football on Saturday night.
Listen, here's the bottom line. Succumbing to peer pressure, that's the point. You cannot be succumbing to peer pressure when you're a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, national champion,
can't hold him to different
and you
standards.
might be entering the NFL draft and being a first-round quarterback.
He's not going to be a first-round quarterback. Have you watched him play?
Well, I agree. I don't think he's very good, but he has those first-round aspirations, and a lot of these experts have him going in the first round.
That's because as a redshirt freshman, we gave him the Heisman Trophy. Did he deserve the Heisman Trophy? Maybe. But was he? I mean, that's what's going to happen. You're going to continue to give these kids the Heisman Trophy at such a young age. Look at Johnny Manziel and all the scrutiny that he's been through in the past 2.5 years because we gave him a Heisman Trophy as a redshirt freshman. That's the crux of the issue, that these kids are getting too much spotlight at too young of an age, and they're not mature enough to handle it. So we can't, with one hand say, you're the best player in college football, but then with the other hand, slap them across the face because they're acting like a 20-year-old kid. You're going to get what you get at 20 years old. I don't care who the hell you are. I was an immature little, knucklehead at 20 years old.
Okay, fair. At what age is it okay to stop being immature then?
I don't think that there is a certain age. I think that there's, a time and a place for everything. Now, like I said, maybe Jameis wasn't in the best place in the student center standing up on the table and yelling what he did. But at the same time, I'm not going to completely destroy him for that because kids will be kids. Now, you got the other stuff against him, so obviously it wasn't the best move.
Right,
but it's not a point to suspend him for an entire game.
And like you mentioned, yes, maybe not his fault that all this Rice and Peterson stuff is going on, but be aware of your surroundings and know that it's going on and know that eyes are on you as a face of college football. Keep your head straight. Keep your mouth shut. You deserve to be suspended.
I disagree wholeheartedly. Two guys who have moved on from the college ranks and now are in the NFL, and both stepped into roles playing this weekend, not starting, but they came in after injuries and after a couple bad performances. Blake Bortles and Teddy Bridgewater. We, again, shockingly, are on opposite sides of who will be the better pro. Mraz is a pro Blake Bortles guy. I am a pro Teddy Bridgewater guy. What we saw from Bortles on Sunday, I won't dismiss that he looked okay, but it was, 35-0 at that point? So the Colts are basically,
they called
get
the
me
doors
out of
off.
here.
They're
not blitzing him. They're not putting in, complicated schemes against them. They didn't game plan for him. They game plan for whoever the hell their starting quarterback is there, Chad Henne. And look what they did to him.
And by the way, Chad Henne did like a whole passing of the torch thing at halftime as they were down. Okay, this is Blake's team.
Yeah,
Chad,
get out of my face.
Let's not act like your Jaguars career was something memorable that you're passing on this golden torch.
In general.
Oh boy, are you kidding me?
I've had enough of that. But, I won't deny that Bortles had a couple bright spots. But I tell you what infuriated me on Sunday about the Blake Bortles stuff. On Sunday, obviously here in New York, we did not get the Eagles and Redskins game. That was the 1 o'clock, and it was the national game on Fox. Or it was it was the big game on Fox that was
the Buck and Aikman.
It was given everywhere basically except for our New York, North Jersey area because the Giants played at 1 o'clock at home, and they were on CBS. So the Giants game ended, and it was kind of just an in-between time, and the Eagles were still going on because that game was super late.
I mean, they had 10 minutes left as every 1 o'clock game was wrapping up.
Yeah, it was kind of bizarre. So anyways, they're cutting into the Eagles in and out, and I'm just like, at that point, I want Scott Hansen and Red Zone to just give me the rest of the Eagles game. It's tied 27 up, and They keep cutting into the Bortles stuff. He throws a touchdown. They're driving down the field. It's 40-something to 7. Get the hell out of here with the freaking Jaguars and the Colts and give me the 27-27 game in Philadelphia. That literally ticked me off to no end. I was getting so furious watching Red Zone. I love Red Zone, but at that point, I don't care what Blake Bortles is doing. Show me the highlights on Monday.
Well, hey, we know the Jaguars are an international team. They have fans everywhere. You got to see what Blake Bortles is doing over North Dakota.
Are they going to London this year? Are they going again?
I'm fairly certain.
Sorry about that. Got a little bit of a cold. We'll dive into that as well. But I think what Bridgewater did too, he didn't do anything outstanding. I think they both kind of had mediocre days, but I think long-term Bridgewater is going to be a better pro because he's a more cerebral guy. He's more athletic, and I won't say that he has a better arm, but I think he has a better grasp on what is going on with defensive schemes in the NFL because of the teams that he played against and the coaching that he had at Louisville with Charlie Strong, who was a defensive-minded guy, whereas George O'Leary down at UCF, I don't know if he did the best job preparing Blake Bortles for the NFL. I think that people are more so on the Bortles bandwagon because of his size and his arm strength. And
he's got all the makeup.
Allegedly, he has all the makeup. We've seen a lot of guys that have all the makeup. Look at Ryan Mallett. Look at Jamarcus Russell. Look at Ryan Leaf. Those are just 3 off the top of my head who are size guys with big arms, and they never panned out. And I think Bortles, now he's not obviously going to be a bust because he wasn't a number 1 overall pick, but I also don't think that he's going to have a flourishing pro career.
Well, hold on now. I mean, the Jaguars surprised. We were at the draft at Radio City.
Right.
When the Jaguars pick was announced and they read Blake Bortles, we were all stunned.
Yeah.
Stunned that they'd pick Blake Bortles. So to say that he can't be a bust, if he fails there, that's a bust because the Jaguars, I mean, other guys on the board there, they could have drafted Sammy Watkins in that spot to replace Blackman.
True.
They're counting on Bortles to be there for the next decade and bring them, not just making the playoffs, I mean, talking about changing the fortunes of the entire franchise. So yes, he could be labeled a bust. I don't think he will. And I think the point of the matter is, you're on this side here. If we go forward, you think long-term,
give me Teddy Bridgewater.
Bridgewater for the career. I'm going to go Bortles. What about the immediacy of this year? I mean, do any of these guys have a prayer to keep their teams in the mix?
No, because I think both teams are pretty bad.
They're bad
but
around.
If the Vikings still had Adrian Peterson, I would probably give the edge to the Vikings just because of AP. But both teams are going nowhere fast. They're both going to be picking in the top 10 again next year, probably the top 5 most likely.
I think we're on board too. Looking at Blake Bortles starting in San Diego, that's a game
that's a
sneaky upset game sitting there. San Diego riding the high horse just when everybody pushes their chips all in, wins against the Seahawks at Buffalo,
and
now they come back home and fall asleep against Blake Bortles in his first start.
I could definitely see that. That's a game. Mraz and I are both in the knockout pool here at CBS, and Mraz is actually running it. And that was the first thing that we talked about last night. We were going through week 4 games and, who we kind of were circling around and who we were definitely staying away from. And we think a lot of people are going to pick the Chargers because they see Chargers at home versus the Jaguars, and that's a game that I would not touch with a 10-foot pole. I think, not that I think that Blake Bortles is going to light the world on fire, but you just don't trust Phillip Rivers and San Diego at home like that.
No, exactly. And listen, hey, I hate to pat our own backs. We were spot on about the Browns at home against the Saints too a couple weeks ago.
That's
when we get an inkling, we get an inkling.
We know we may not always be the smartest of bettors or the smartest of gamblers, but we know where to steer clear of in certain situations. One thing you didn't steer clear of this weekend, texting me during the Redskins-Eagles game, shortly after during and then after the Chris Baker cheap shot on Nick Foles. After
you mean the Chris Baker finishing the play?
That was not finishing the play. I can't. I'm going to try to remain calm here because if not, I may reach across and Chris Baker you. You were texting me some things about, basically, I don't even, what were you saying? I can't even remember. Because
First of all, let's not skew the audience here listening to the Permission Granted podcast, which you can find on iTunes by subscribing and on YouTube. Let's not skew the audience. You texted the immediacy of that, like, can you believe this cheap shot? I responded. I didn't go out of my way to text you. And my response was, essentially, Eagle fans, I mean, you love Dawkins, and Dawkins is a hero in Philadelphia.
Oh, right.
And he was the king of headhunting and cheap shots, and he basically ruined.
What cheap shots? I kill you. Get out of here with the I kill your cheap shot.
Hilliard's career.
Shut up.
People out here aren't. Exactly. You know why they're saying who? Because his career was ruined by Brian Dawkins. You Eagle fans have sat there and had cheap shots and cheap. Donovan McNabb answered cell phones. Then Deshaun Jackson acted like a punk for you guys, which obviously acted like a punk for the Redskins. there.
I got to tell you now, I was pro Deshaun, obviously, when he was with the Eagles, but when he stood up at his first catch on
Zach's
Sunday.
annoying, isn't it? Yeah, we dealt with it. Point is, you Eagle fans got what not that Foles deserved to get hit like that. I want to.
So we got what we deserved, is what you're saying.
I'm just saying, for you guys to all act all up in arms with the woe is me. You Eagle fans need to calm down.
That was a cheap
Might
shot.
Be a cheap shot.
That was a cheap shot, especially after all the blows that he had taken. And I tell you what, if I'm the head coach of the Eagles, if I'm Chip Kelly, or if I'm any of the front office brass, Howie Roseman, I'm signing Jason Peters a side check for like $15,000, or I'm giving him the game ball, because what he did to Chris Baker after that is exactly what any teammate should have done. Because if that happened to Eli, Will Beatty or whoever the hell else they got on the offensive line would have went down and just started pummeling that cat.
You know what's funny about that? You just brought this up. I'm thinking of this on the fly. A couple years ago, that Vince Young game against Philly, Eli got cheap shotted after a play. I was there. I forget the Eagle that did it, and it was a whole sideline melee.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't ring a bell.
Obviously,
I remember
it doesn't ring a bell. Us coming back and winning. I remember that rings a bell.
That game was a hideous win, yes. But it's funny.
A win is a win is a win.
Eli got cheap shotted behind the play by one of these Philly, jamokes, and it caused the whole
melee.
melee.
Don't use the word jamoke, because, now I'm not going to want to say the word jamoke.
Once again, you Eagle
DA
fans.
already says it enough, with jamoke. I introduced him to that word 21 months ago, and now I can't use it because he overuses it.
Oh,
look out.
Slinging arrows that way, huh?
Yeah, I guess
you're not going to get any more passes thrown your way.
That's it. All right. To rein it back in here, before we go completely off the rails, which we basically have. This weekend was the first weekend that both you and I have had winning weekends together. I went 2-1 on Saturday. You went 2-1 on Sunday. It feels good to finally, pick some winners, but I got to be completely honest and completely transparent. I was rooting hard against all three of your picks. I was hoping for an 0-3 weekend. For you.
That must mean you're feeling the pressure, because
No, I'm not feeling the pressure, but I just don't think, a couple
you're
of the
struggling, and you can't pick college football games anymore.
I have.
You have a syndrome. You're a mental case. You have no magic up your sleeve, and Sodium's Licks picks are becoming the phenomenon of this fall. They're the pop culture phenomenon on the DA show.
Look at this. And self-serving
Is it not true?
Is it not true?
Mouth. And we are above 500. If you've been playing my bets.
4-6.
4-6. Yeah, it smells like playoffs,
week
huh?
3. It's my third week of picks because I had to institute that stupid bowl ban because of freaking Diaz. Thanks again, Mike. So I'm just getting my feet wet here. I mean, we got plenty.
Getting your feet wet.
Plenty of college football.
When are they soaked
left.
by Thanksgiving? Oh my goodness.
No, actually, this time last year I was hanging around the same thing. I was 2 games under 500. I was 1 game over 500.
Yeah, and then once people losing their mortgages.
And then once October hits, then I go on a run, and that's when people buy their second and third houses and their second and third cars, and you move on.
The
from
Jersey
there.
City properties, if you will.
For those who don't know, Jersey City is kind of like Hoboken's ugly stepsister.
To be fair, I meant the Jersey Shore, not Jersey City. I meant the Jersey Shore.
What, Seaside Heights is more what you're talking?
Yeah. Vinny and the boys. Let's get the fist bumping going.
No, thanks. That was one of the worst television shows of all time, but it was a guilty pleasure for me on Thursday nights I used to watch. I don't know why to this day, because I hate those situations. I hate the club, and I hate the whole deep V and the hair gel and the
but you couldn't help it. You got to watch it.
No, it was a sickness.
I wish Angelina never went away. Boy, was she smoking.
Oh, get out of here. She was hideous.
Come on.
I'm serious. She was garbage.
Here we go.
That personality.
Here we go. With your hippie attitude.
Oh, you know what it is? It's the Long Island thing. I think she's a Long Island girl.
I think she's a Staten Island girl.
Either way, an island is an island.
Long Island was JWoww. I got all the characters memorized.
Oh, that's disgusting. By the way, can she have any more work done? I mean, she had a decent body to begin with. Do we need the facelift at this point? Let's transition seamlessly.
You need a facelift.
All right. So on Sundays, we obviously, Sunday night into Monday, we do no guests on the show. We do all recap of the NFL, of college football. And there's always a segment dedicated to Merez's Football Sunday conquering of foods. This past Sunday was not one to be dismissed. Merez, can you just give a quick rundown of what you went through on Sunday watching the games? Food-wise?
Buffalo chicken dip, nachos, stuffed cheese pretzel bites.
Right.
Oh, boy. We had the antipasta platter.
Ziti, I think you said.
Big ziti. Then it happened to be my wife's birthday, so we had ice cream cake after. Midi tacos were in the
So,
mix there.
It's easy to say that you were just purely gluttonous on Sunday.
Listen,
because it's your quote-unquote cheat day, because the other 6 days of the week aren't quote-unquote cheat days.
No, it is a cheat day because I totally intake the calories. You know, one day you're going to have to come and make one of your mockumentaries at 30 for 30s and come watch some football at the Mraz house.
That actually is a great idea. It's way better than some other ideas that DA and some of the other people have been jamming down
and it's
my
not like
throat.
you're going to be able to enjoy the games. We have the multiple TVs going. You see, you know.
But the problem is we have to pick a weekend when the Giants and Eagles are on opposite. You know, we need a 1 o'clock and a 4 o'clock. And we don't need them playing each other or playing in
We'll break down the schedule.
The same time slot.
No, of course. We'll break down the schedule. But point is, you can see that, you know, it's a solid cheat day. It's a solid cheat day. All you do is eat and watch the games.
Yeah,
and
but
I find it hard to believe that all across America you have these wing deals and everything else going on football Sundays. Like everybody else ain't eating like a pig like I am on Sundays. I mean, what are you
I think
eating?
they eat like pigs. They eat like, 13 wings and maybe some French fries, but they're not going over the top like you do. What do I eat on Sunday? What did I eat this past Sunday?
Yeah, what do you got? Big mouth, sitting there watching the Redskins Eagles?
Yeah, well, from what I could watch of that game.
Sitting there watching the Jaguars Colts?
I sat there with a nice Coca-Cola in a mason jar on ice and some chips. They were tortilla chips toasted with sesame seeds and some guacamole.
All right.
That's
couple
literally
things.
what I ate on Sunday for the game.
That's a
and that was the
disgrace.
splurge for me because I went grocery shopping before the 1 o'clock games on Sunday with my girlfriend. And I stood in the frozen food aisle and I eyed up mozzarella sticks and frozen chicken wings for a good 3 or 4 minutes. I'm like, oh, man, do I really want to splurge? You know what? I kind of had a weird weekend eating, so I think I need to try to get back on track here. So I splurged a little bit with the chips and the guac. That's what I did.
Here's the thing. That's a disgrace because why even waste a mason jar putting Coca-Cola in it? Not to mention, who calls it Coca-Cola anymore?
Well, I didn't want to say Coke and then there'd be some, I've got a bad reputation on the show as it is.
Well, hey, listen, we know we go to you for certain spots for a reason.
Exactly. The drugs, the tattoos, and, come on.
Anything hippie related. B.
Can you stop saying it? By the way, if you're going to call me a hipster, call me a hipster. I'm not a hippie.
I'm sure.
I'm not walking around here with the peace signs and the tie-dye and the J-bone hanging out of my mouth.
You're a modern-day hippie.
Which is called a hipster.
Okay, well, I'm still going hippie.
Geez,
Second of all, can you just open up a bag of toasted? Why does everything have to be so fancy schmancy with you? You say you don't want to splurge on frozen foods, and then you're eating, Tostito chips or
toasted tortilla chips
toasted
with sesame seeds.
And by the way, what does the sesame seed do there to
adds a little bit of kick?
A kick?
Yeah. Come on. You need the sesame seed on the tortilla.
When I have a sesame seed bagel, I'm not, burning my mouth off. I don't understand the point of that. And only the guac. Can I get some salsa, maybe a little beef queso?
No.
A little sampler, if you will.
No, I like the guac because it has the pico de gallo built in, this special brand that I buy.
It's very...
And then I add in my own hot sauce that I brought back from Honduras, which is hotter than anything that you've ever eaten.
To me, it is very clear that you don't understand how to enjoy a football Sunday.
No, it is. I
You're
do, but I just don't need to be over the
yourself
top.
on sesame seeds.
Yeah, right. I'm starving myself, Mraz. I'm taking care of myself because I have a long-term, future and long-term plan. But you know what didn't help me take care of myself? And this brings it full circle here. You 2 weeks ago coming in here basically on your deathbed, and your cough. You still got the cough. I mean, DA can hear it in his talkback sometimes when we're doing the show. He said to you to, when you got a cough, turn and cough because when you cough into the mic, it ricochets into his ear, which then affects him when he's on the air. Like that right there, exactly. Yeah, you try to hit the cough button, you couldn't get there soon enough. And then last week, Schwartzo came in here with basically this 24-hour virus in which he was, a walking, talking pneumonia.
He was turning blue.
I mean, it was a disaster. Pete, can you take a day off? Can you not say, because I know he's taking a couple days, Thursday and Friday off at the end of this week because he had a planned holiday and stuff. But take a day off last week because now I'm in here and I feel like I'm the walking dead. My nose is completely congested. I got the stupid cough that Mraz has. My body's exhausted. People around CBS need to learn how to take days off. We are given X amount of days to take personal health days, to take mental days, whatever. Take a health day, take a sick day when you're sick, because when you infect other people with whatever god-awful disease it is, they're going to get pissed off at you. And Schwartzo is top of my list right now because I said to him that it was his fault, and he tried to pass the blame off on somebody else because that's what Pete does.
Wow, boy, a real anti-Schwartzo ran here at the end of the podcast.
Well, you know what? I'm sick and tired of feeling the way that I do. It's been 48 hours.
Listen, you baby. I was sick. He was sick. We both got better.
Yeah, take days off. Take days off. No, because
you're
you
gonna
said
get better
no,
too.
because you said to me last week, and you know exactly where I'm going.
What is that?
When you're sick, you feel like you're never going to get better, and then that's the mindset that you have.
And I'm
and
trying
then
to
one
talk
day
it
you
through.
wake up, and then one day you wake up and feel better. I know that I'm going to get better, but I don't want to feel like this. It's nice out. I want to be able to take my dog for a walk. I want to be able to go do stuff in Hoboken and not lay in bed feeling like dog crap for 24 hours a day or for 16 hours until I got to come back into freaking work.
Two things. The proper term there is manure. Second of all,
What did I say?
dog crap.
Oh, so what?
Your Philly dirty mouth again.
No, actually, we clean up pretty well for this podcast.
We do.
Because I
We
could go
do.
in and insert bleeps every time I want to curse, but I try to restrain myself because we want to show some sort of quote-unquote professionalism here.
Second of all, to tie this all in, I've had it. Schwartz has had it. You've had it.
DA's next.
DA,
We're in
message
trouble.
to you.
It's coming, pal.
Bring the mask in. Be careful.
Yeah.
This thing's airborne and it's coming for you, and that's not good for the audience.
No, and
because
that's not
that
good for
means
us.
call him a porker. He giggles. Bully Berman might be filling in soon.
Either that or the national JJ After Doc radio program. And those are two things. Obviously, we like working with the both of them, but a sick DA is a bad DA for everybody listening, and including Mraz and I, because when DA is sick, he is not a happy camper, just like me. I'm a miserable SOB, and DA is just like that. So I hope,
Who isn't, by the way, when you're sick?
you come across one or two people who enjoy being sick because they take the sick days, but I don't take the sick day.
They watch the prices right to get it. But listen, bottom line is prepare for the worst, hope for the best.
Exactly. All right, so that'll wrap things up here on the Side B of the Permission Granted podcast. Remember, subscribe to us on iTunes. Check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/The DA Show. DA will tweet it out as soon as it's up, DA on CBS. I will tweet it out at KBrockJR, as will Mraz, at Sean Marash CBS. And thanks for downloading and checking us out, and we'll talk to you again next week.